everything's just swaying back and forth, and I just threw my boom down and went back downstairs.
How about you?
I was also on the 6th floor, and I started running. I was really scared. I didn't know what was happening, and the guy grabbed me and told me to get against the wall, you know, and then when it stopped, get out of there as fast as I could. It just really scared me. I thought the floor was going to come through.
And where were you?
I was on the 1st floor amongst a bunch of pulleys. I didn't have any control over my legs, so I dove for... I didn't have any control over my legs, so I dove underneath a post until it quit and ran out, and I ran about a 5-second 100-yard dash in street shoes. I was out on the garbage decks and saw the boxcars waving right next to me, and I just started running. The woman behind me fell, and another guy picked her up.
You see the tower?
I was right by the tower. It was waving pretty bad.
Did you see the tower come down?
That's right. Well, I was in the 3rd floor in the package department on the baling machine, and we didn't know what the heck was happening until somebody yelled earthquake. And then I ran for the warehouse with a bunch of other guys. We were going to jump in the water, but then it stopped. So then we went back, and I went down the railroad tracks and helped pull some guys out of the lumber down there. One was dead, I'm pretty sure.
Governor, at this point, how do you assess the situation?
Well, I think we're really pretty lucky. It was a fairly severe earthquake, as I suspect anybody in the area knows by now. It didn't last long enough to cause severe damage except in a few areas. I'm very, very sorry to hear that we have had at least a few deaths as a direct result of the earthquake, which is, of course, tragic. The property damage, I'm sure, will run into many hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably into the millions.
What about the state capitol building itself, the legislative building and the dome?
After just a cursory examination, I asked that the legislative building be cleared, that we stay away during the day until we've had a much more comprehensive survey, a structural survey, particularly of the dome itself. There are some indications from the initial examination that there is some problems at the base of the dome, and we're trying to survey to find out how extensive the damage is.
What's been the reaction? I understand you had a call from Governor Egan of Alaska and the President.
Yes, I was very, very thoughtful of both of them. Governor Egan called very shortly after the quake. He expressed not only his sympathy, but also his offer of any technical assistance or any people they have that could be of aid to us as a result of their knowledge and their experience, of course, in Alaska. And the President himself called on the same thing to offer whatever help they could at the federal level, and his sympathy particularly to the families of those who had died in the quake.
Where were you when this happened?
Well, I was just getting ready to leave the mansion, having breakfast and just getting ready to come to my office when the quake hit. The first thing I did was try to find my young son. I thought he was upstairs, and by the time I got almost upstairs, I found out he was downstairs instead. So about that time the quake stopped.
General Llewellyn, I understand you had warnings that the next quake might occur here in Washington. Can you explain that?
That's right. When I was in Alaska in April of last year, following the great quake in Alaska, I was told by seismologists and geologists that they felt that the next heavy quake that hit the United States would hit the state of Washington.
What's civil defense doing right at this moment?
Well, we have our people out, of course, mainly on the cleanup, and we are surveying the damage to see if we qualify for federal funding of damage to public facilities. I'm quite sure we will. We'll have a meeting at 1 o'clock this afternoon in the governor's office that will give us a consolidated report of what's occurred in damage in the entire area of the state, 2 public buildings and structures and facilities.
You've looked at some of these other buildings around the Capitol campus. What is the damage and where?
Well, the main visible damage that anyone can see is to light fixtures. These are the large neon type that came crashing down. They injured several of the state employees. One had to go to the hospital. You wonder how so many people could escape injury, because the offices, particularly on the 4th and 3rd floors of many of the buildings, are a real mess. And this is the main visible damage. Then you see damage to pillars and to structural damage as you go through some of the buildings. How serious this is, it would take a real engineer going over very carefully to decide.
Would you say that the state came through this quake fairly lucky?
Oh, we were very lucky. I do not believe the damage will prove as severe as it was in '49. But how severe, we don't know yet, and we won't know maybe for a day or two.
came right out. I came right out from there, and I started hauling an earthquake. The people to get away from the building.
Did you see things coming down?
Yeah, people was under there, that building, see? And people were coming down and started hauling an earthquake. Get out of the building.
Well, I was in my room. I didn't go outside. I heard one fellow shouting out in the hall, but I know that the hotel seemed to shake like a draggers box.
I was at Queen Anne High School on the second floor, and I looked and the floor started, there was ripples in the floor, and we just ran out and everybody started running out.
Were you in class at the time?
No, school hadn't started.
How about you?
Yeah, I was on the same floor with her, and at first we thought it was just someone running down the hall, and then there was a lot of noise from the building. Something was moving, and then the floor was shaking up and down, and everyone just started running out. There wasn't any panic, but we all left.
I was in the elevator in the Great Northern Building.
What was the feeling? Did you feel it in there?
The elevator wouldn't move. I pushed all the buttons, and it was shaking, and I didn't know what to do. So finally the door opened, and I looked down, and it was still shaking, and I walked down and ran out the building.
The people were running out into the street?
They sure were.
Where were you when the earthquake hit?
In my house, why?
What did you feel?
Started to rumble.
What did you do?
Ran outside, what else?
This shows where it actually first came in. In other words, this is the first arrival in Seattle is right here. These lines here are minute marks, and the pen will move along here, and this bottom line that you can see is where it was coming along, and all of a sudden it started to wiggle. This is where we found it here at the university very first, and here it doesn't show like much, but this is when we really felt it, but it was moving so fast and in such a direction that this particular instrument couldn't pick up the large displacements, and you can see it looks quite small, and then it starts building up. Well, as far as aftershocks, we probably will have some. Whether they're going to be quite strong or not, it's in my opinion they probably won't be. We probably will record a few of them here, but if we could get some portable setups over close to the epicenter location, I'm sure we'd record many aftershocks. They'll all be rather small though. Compared damage-wise, there's probably going to be a little less damage, but I don't know yet, of course. But this is mainly due to location. This quake appears to be larger than the 49 quake in magnitude. In other words, there was more energy released at this quake than in the 49 quake. Fortunately, the location was in a rather unpopulated area. This was about 1/10 as strong as the Alaska shock.
There's no way you can predict these?
No, you can't. There may be someday. There's lots of research going on how to predict an earthquake, but at this stage of the game, and especially here in Washington where there has been no research going on in predicting, possible predicting and factors to watch to predict earthquakes, there's no way to predict them at all.